Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, what would happen if your mobile phone killed you?
We are tonight's entertainment.
I would rather watch Beautician and the Beast.
People don't forget.
And here we go.
Made for movies.
We are back finally. Wow, it has been a minute. I am so happy to be back. I will explain where we've been. And of course, we have a massive comeback episode for you guys. 3 movies in theaters we're going to be reviewing. We'll be kicking it off with our Free Guy review, as well as I'll have a very special guest on for reviews for Don't Breathe 2, as well as our main event today, the 2021 version of Candyman. So really looking forward to all of that. But before we get there, just want to let everyone know what's going on. So we are really working hard to get YouTube up and running. So that's what I've been focusing on the last few weeks. So that should be launching sometime in the fall, of course. We will still have a podcast episode every single Thursday. That'll be with most new release movie reviews, some classics as well, going over some news once in a while. And we will still have our special episodes here and there, which will drop on Mondays or Fridays. I'll always give you a heads up on those. But Thursday is where we're going to stay for the most part. And, of course, keep an eye out for all of the YouTube stuff. That's going to be really exciting. So definitely check that out. Subscribe to our YouTube page, Made for Movies. Check us out on social media, Made for Movies Podcast on Instagram. We're posting memes, new reviews every single day on there. Really quick 1-minute reviews of the films that we review on here. So if this is a little bit long for you, maybe you'll enjoy that. But let's get to it. We're going to be starting off the day with my review of Free Guy. Of course, starring none other than Ryan Reynolds, directed by Sean Levy, also starring Taika Waititi, Lil Ray Howery, Jodie Comer, and Joe Keery, who is from Stranger Things. And this movie, going into it, so I had some decently high expectations. I will say that for the most part, this looked to be pretty much a remake, a live-action version of the Lego Movie, which I'm a huge fan of, as well as incorporating some elements of Ready Player One. That's pretty much the movie that we got. So overall, I did really enjoy this film. Of course, this was made a long time ago, 3 or 4 years ago. They had this movie made through Fox. Once Disney purchased Fox, it became a Disney property, and I'm not going to get into spoilers for this one just because I think it's better going in, if you have not seen it, to not really know all of the little surprises that they have planned. But it does seem to me that those surprises were mostly done after they filmed this film and added back in as little Easter eggs here and there. And I thought that those moments were some of the highlights of the movie, as well as some really fantastic cameos. But overall, this movie, it's a great kids movie. At the end of the day, if I were 12 years old, this would have been one of my favorite films ever. I still found it to be enjoyable. Some of the humor didn't land for me. I'm a big Ryan Reynolds fan, and he's definitely very good at what he does, his style of humor. If you like Deadpool 2, you will definitely recognize the jokes are very similar, just told in a PG-13 manner. And he's great in this film. He really has nailed this type of character. He knows he could play it in his sleep for sure. And I thought the humor in this is the weakest part of the movie, believe it or not. I think the overall plot is really well executed, and I found myself more invested in the characters in the real world than Ryan Reynolds' story. Again, not that he was not as good as them or anything. I just thought it was a little bit more interesting. Funny enough, the trailers really don't show anything from the real world other than they do show Taika Waititi is in the film, but watching the trailer, there'd be no way to know that he's just not part of the video game. So I thought that nice surprise going in of not really knowing how the story was going to unfold really helped with the pacing of the film. And I thought the third act was very, very well done. Very, very sweet film. So if you like these types of movies, like I said, Lego Movie, Ready Player One, you're just getting that added element of Ryan Reynolds, Taika Waititi, and some other great actors. So I definitely think you will enjoy it. If you have kids, it's 100% going to be one of their favorite movies ever. I know there's a lot of shout outs to video games, and especially people who stream video games. I'm personally not too familiar with some of the stuff they were talking about, even though I play a lot of video games. So I'm sure younger kids could school me on what's actually happening with some of these cameos from stars of Twitch and some other video game, YouTube, of course. But yeah, overall, really fun time with this film. Some standout action sequences. Really happy to see this movie's making a lot of money. So with COVID, not a lot of stuff has really been successful at the box office recently. So this film is going to clear over $100 million, and it only cost about $100 million to make. I know Disney is salivating that they might finally have a live-action movie franchise on their hands, the first since Pirates of the Caribbean. So very exciting stuff. I think there's a ton of potential to continue this story in very unique ways. And yeah, I'll definitely be there for the ride. So for you guys that don't follow us on social media, I have started doing movie reviews on there as well of the movies that we've done on here, and we've started a totally new rating system. So we still do the movies out of 10, but instead of just kind of going off emotion when I see a film, which tends to happen with a lot of these new releases, from there, what we decided was there's going to be 10 categories that we focus on. So they are cinematography, the overall story narrative, acting, dialogue, the characters in the film and the growth that they have, the pacing of the film, the opening and the opening act, as well as the ending and how the movie ends as far as the final scene is concerned, as well as score, music, sound design, and originality. So a lot of this movie scored very well in a lot of these categories, so it ended up coming. I'm not going to go through every single category. If you want to see the breakdown, we will be posting it on all our social media pages in the next week or so check that out for sure. But overall, this movie ended up as a 7 out of 10. So a good film, something I'll definitely be watching again at some point. And like I said, I can recommend this to pretty much everyone out there. So we are going to take a little break. When we come back, I have a very special guest who has been on the podcast before. Adam Tylenda of the Movie Mania podcast will be joining me for my reviews of Don't Breathe 2, as well as the new #1 film in America, Candyman. So we'll be right back. And we are back. I have a very special guest with us for the second half of this episode, Mr. Adam Tylenda of the Movie Mania podcast. How are we doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I can't wait to hear your Free Guy review.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Not as much as I was hoping to enjoy it, but, definitely was worth a watch, I think. I would have loved it if I was 12 years old.
Nice. Yeah, still haven't seen it. I will get to it eventually. I've watched like 5 movies over the last 3 days, binging some must-watches, and Free Guy slipped through the cracks, so we'll see.
Yeah, everyone dies at the end.
Nice, as it should be.
As it should be. Yep. So today, of course, you are our official horror movie guest. I can only get you to come on. No one else will talk about scary films with me. So thank you for that. And we have a couple that we're going to hit today. Going to start with the Don't Breathe franchise, and then we will move into the main event, which will be Candyman. Do not say it 4 more times, or that will be the end of this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, should be. It's these should be 2 very good discussions. It's going to be interesting.
I would say interesting is it'll probably be scarier than the new Candyman. That's all I have to say.
100%.
100%. But let's start with Don't Breathe. So we're going to review Don't Breathe 2. We'll touch on the original Don't Breathe. I know you are a pretty big fan. So just tell me how you were feeling heading into Don't Breathe 2 and just your quick feelings on the first film.
Yeah, so I'll do expectations first. I didn't necessarily have expectations. It was just a lot of questions, like how are they going to make me care about this character that is obviously not a great person and is the antagonist of the first film. So what happened after the first title? From the trailers we saw, he has a daughter now, so what the heck happened there? So I also didn't necessarily think that the movie should have been made. I thought it would have been a great one-off. It obviously made a profit and made some pretty good money, so, Hollywood. But yeah, just a lot of questions, not necessarily expectations. As you alluded to, I absolutely love the first one. It's probably in my top 10 to 15 horror/thriller movies ever.
Wow.
I just thought it was extremely original, so well done. Lang is an absolute beast. He plays the role perfectly, and it kept me on my toes the entire time. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I was really nervous going into the second one, hoping that it didn't disappoint me too much. But it was pretty good. So what were your expectations? How'd you feel about it? And remind us what you feel about the first one.
Yeah, so with the original Don't Breathe, I remember liking it a lot more than... So I actually rewatched it after I watched Don't Breathe 2. And after watching Don't Breathe 2, I liked Don't Breathe a lot less. I don't know if that...
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the effect of the sequel amps everything up, so the first one moves at a little bit of a slower pace, kind of like I know you were talking about a comparison between Alien and Aliens, which clearly Aliens moves at a million miles an hour, as does Don't Breathe 2. My biggest issues with the original, one, I do think it is very, very original for that type of movie, and I'll say what I love about it. It plays with your expectations on who you're rooting for. But that's also the issue with it is there's really no likable characters. I don't really care about the people breaking into this guy's house, and they do become the protagonist by the end of the film, and she's somewhat likable, but for the most part, they're pretty terrible people, and I think the first act really struggles to set up stakes because you kind of are rooting for Lang in the first act, and then, of course, things do take a turn, which we can, as far as Don't Breathe goes, one of the if you have not seen it, don't listen to this part of it, but one of the better twists in a movie, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that you could see that coming, obviously. It was very original, something I hadn't seen before, and you think that the twist is going to be that this guy's fighting back, right? Like, that's the big thing that was shown in the trailers, and then obviously you get what you get, and it kind of just puts the movie on its head. Just, again, very well done. I rewatched it as well. I'm a weirdo. I prefer slower movies for whatever reason, so I don't necessarily think that, we'll talk about it with Don't Breathe 2, but I liked the slower pace, I like the slow burn, and I like the subtle reveals that we get throughout the movie.
Yeah, and to your point, I will watch Alien 100 times while I'll watch Aliens, once every few years. I think it's the far superior film. But for some reason, some of it just didn't click for me rewatching. I still think it's really good. Of course, we're doing our new scoring system. I gave Don't Breathe, I think, a 7.2 out of 10, rating it in the 10 categories that we're doing now. So still a really good and very rewatchable film for sure. And the third act is almost perfect, But let's move into Don't Breathe 2. Yeah, sorry to cut you off there. But yeah, how did you feel about this movie? Just general thoughts. I know you were very skeptical going in as far as who we were going to be rooting for. So,
yeah, so exactly. Starting off with, and my favorite thing, if you watch Movie Mania at all, or listen to it, I guess you don't watch it, but I'm a big cinematography guy. I thought the way this movie was shot, it was really well done. We talked about it right after we had both seen it. There's a one shot in this movie in the first act of the film that's probably about 2 to 3 minutes long, keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time, and it's just phenomenally done. In my opinion, it's the best scene of the movie. But the story, again, I do have some real issues. Again, we talked about this before. You hadn't noticed them for whatever reason. I just must have been in a nitpicky mood. They stood out. They were screaming at me in the entire second and third act. We can talk about that a little bit more, obviously, in the spoilers because it is plot heavy.
Yeah.
But there were some story beats that I wasn't a fan of. I know we had both read reviews before talking about the dialogue. I had no problem with the dialogue in this movie whatsoever. There's going to be cheesy moments and thrillers that are just made today. It's just going to happen. But I thought they were fine. The way that they perceived the characters actually ended up being a positive for me. The plot device that they used with the daughter and her obviously being the focal point of her safety. You care about her, obviously. The way that they navigated that, it actually really worked for me. So the character problems didn't actually go the way that I thought it would, which is a very big positive. And then just to close it up, it's a shorter movie. It's probably about hour 30 to an hour 40. I can't see it being any longer. I did think that there were some scenes that I thought went on a little bit too long, especially in the third act, to where I thought it could have been a little bit tighter just to get closer to that 130-minute runtime. But definitely worth the watch, especially if you are a fan of the first one and revisiting some of these characters. Did a very good job. It was an interesting story, and I thought it was good overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you about a lot of what you're saying. So for me, going on that one shot that you're talking about, I did think it was the strongest point in the film, and it really pulled me in. I was kind of skeptical watching, waiting for something to happen, especially, of course, the trailers do give away the entire setup of the film. And rewatching the first one, they also do a similar shot. It's a singular take that moves through the house, but it all stays on the first floor. So while it's well done, it's a little gimmicky to me in the sense of, like, it almost reminded me of Panic Room. Like it's almost like a CGI element to it moving throughout the house, and it felt very gimmicky. Whereas this felt like you were like literally with the little girl moving through the house trying to avoid these people, and it just really worked for me. Of course, this one was not directed by Fede Alvarez. It was directed by a man's name who I have butchered many a times. Rodo Sagayas is what I've settled on. I apologize if that is not correct. And I thought he did a really good job kind of picking up where Alvarez left off. And I do think Alvarez is a pretty talented horror director. So I love that. I did have a couple issues with the film. None of the issues you had, funny enough, but I thought that the third act was very rushed. You know, the whole setup of the trailer was that he was leaving to go kind of get this little girl back is where the film leaves it. And I thought that they could have done a lot more with that aspect of it. And we'll get into spoilers here in a second. But I thought it was very rushed until the end scene that you're talking about, which was very extended. It was about a 10-minute final scene that could have probably been about 5 minutes. So I didn't think it felt long. I just thought the time could have been spent elsewhere. But yeah, let's jump into spoilers. If you have not seen Don't Breathe 2, I will recommend that you do go see both of these films. I scored the first one at a 7.2, and I scored the second one at a 7.5. So both very good films. Tylenda, I will not make you score them unless you want to, but let's move into spoilers if you have anything.
Yeah, so again, and I don't want to blitz a film. Again, I do recommend seeing it and everything like that. But I thought once they brought the dog plot device into the movie, it started to create a lot of problems. It just, to me, it was not believable. I understand that he saved the dog's life and everything like that, but 3 minutes earlier, this dog was chomping at your face through a mattress. And it's like, again, I understand that you saved the dog, but is the dog really going to now be your loyal servant throughout the rest of the movie? To me, it's just a little bit beyond the scale of belief. And then also the other problem I had was everybody stayed in this city. Like after the events of the first one, Stephen Lang's character is staying relatively close to everything that had gone down, as well as the father of the daughter, who is eventually revealed. Obviously, he's doing these kidnappings and whatnot. It was just a little bit too much for me, and it kind of brought me out of it. I was really enjoying it up until he started walking with the dog back to the warehouse or wherever they were staying at. Those were where my two biggest problems were. What about you?
Yeah, so I don't know why the dog thing didn't bother me. I knew why they were trying to do it. So one thing I did love about this film is at about the halfway point, which breezes by the first half of this movie, I didn't know if it had been 45 minutes or 20 minutes. I guess that's why I was so confused the movie ended so quickly, because really the first two acts are them taking the little girl, and then the final act is him going to get her.
Yes.
But they needed to have you root for somebody heading into the final act, and I was actually very confused. I didn't know which way they were going to go with it, which I thought was really well done. I felt uneasy. I was thinking for a brief time that maybe the blind man was going to be the villain in the final third of this film as she is reunited with her parents. And of course, they have a huge twist that they are trying to actually kill her to save her mom's life, which I thought that part of the movie really kicked it into gear for the final part. So I guess I was not really being too nitpicky with the dog at that point because I was happy that they had kind of set the expectations of who was good and who was bad.
Yeah. See, actually, now that you're saying that, I kind of wish that they would have gone that route and had Stephen Lang's character as the villain and having everybody else protect her. I don't have a problem with the way that they went. I thought it was very original. I didn't see it coming. And the way that they set up the scene is very well done. But yeah, I could not, for whatever reason, I don't know if I was in a bad mood that day, I could not get past the dog leading them back to the warehouse.
Yeah. I was thinking about, because I know you had mentioned this to me before with the dog, and what could they have done differently to make this work? I think the answer probably has something to do with the female character that they introduced that is murdered, because she does take their license plate down. I thought that could have been a plot device, that she ends up finding him left for dead, basically, and then she takes him to this house. That's about the only realistic way to get a blind person there other than the dog. So
I seriously think I think you just solved it. But that's also I forgot to mention I do think that this film could have been better if it was not a Don't Breathe 2 sequel. I think that it would have been better as just an independent movie. Again, I understand establishing it. You have an established IP and it's going to make money. But in terms of just the movie, I think we could have done better. It solves the blind plot device and some of the problems that we have. But yeah, I love that idea, having the girl taking down the license plate like she did, and then leading the man and it's them two versus the culprits that we had the whole movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing we'll touch on is the finale, which does drag on a little bit, gets a little bit silly. I did appreciate that although they clearly do want you to root for the blind man who raped someone in the previous film, they don't romanticize him in a way where they try to make him seem like he's totally better. And he dies, which I also appreciated, that his character doesn't get the the happily ever after effect. One thing I did hate about the finale, though, I forgot to mention, is the character that lets him live. That's just kind of thrown into the film to basically give him the pass and say, "Oh, you're not as evil as these people, so go save the girl." I just thought it was really rushed. His character came into the film in the last 30 or 40 minutes. So, but what are your thoughts on the finale?
Yeah, so kind of already touched on it. We both agree that it did go on a little bit too long. I was checking my watch a couple times in those last 20 minutes or so. I liked that it took place in it was in an abandoned pool area. I thought there was some cool stuff that they did within those final couple of minutes. I was happy. I was I respect the fact that they killed everybody off. I thought that was very well done. I think it needed to happen, and obviously the happy ending we get with the girl going to the orphanage or whatever it was.
Is that a happy ending?
For her instance,
yeah.
Given her two options, I think so. But yeah, I thought it actually concluded pretty well, other than I thought there could have been some edits to lessen the time a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that pretty much wraps up Don't Breathe 2. Not a very complicated film. If you like thrillers, if you like that sort of home invasion genre, Don't Breathe is, of course, an excellent spin on it, and Don't Breathe 2 really plays with your expectations if you've seen the first film. So definitely go watch both of those films. But it is time to move on to Mr. Candyman.
Buckle up.
Buckle up, right? So I know me and you, we talk scary movies all the time. We tend to agree on a lot of the newer films that come out as far as what's scary, what isn't, what we look for. Where we tend to differ, I think, is perfectly reasonable, is the movies we grew up on. I was a crazy little child who watched Candyman and Child's Play and all these films when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. Thank you, Mom. So they do have a very special place in my heart. Let's start with the first one. Candyman, 1992 film based off the Clive Barker short story, The Forbidden. This movie is important to a lot of people out there. It's really the first film to have a black featured villain, like a super villain, like a Freddy Krueger type character. And this movie is very similar to Nightmare on Elm Street. But where do you stand? I know you just watched it for the first time. Is that right?
Yeah, so this, for whatever reason, I had made up this lie in my head that I've seen this movie before. And then, so I went for the rewatch, and I'm like 30 minutes through the film, I'm like, I had not seen this thing at all. So it was a true first time watch. I thought it was good. I can definitely see why people love it so much and why is it beloved and all that good stuff. For me, I don't necessarily think that it holds up as well as some of the other horror movies that I've seen from the past. But again, I definitely see why people love it. My expectations for the new one, strictly based on Jordan Peele's writing credit and Yaya. Two household names by now. They're both fantastic in what they do. And so I was really excited for this one. But what about you? I know this is obviously very nostalgic for you.
Yeah, so it's funny. I feel like this movie puts you in a trance because when I rewatched it twice, once last year and then once right before this one, and I did not remember anything about it. It must have been 20 plus years since I had watched it, and I was actually pleasantly surprised at how well it held up for me, because when I rewatched these early 90s, late 80s horror films, I mean, they're not very good. A lot, like most of them, it's just the acting really tends to hold it back, and in this one the supporting actors are very, very poor. I forget the guy's name. Her lover is just unnecessarily a dick for no reason at all. Yeah, like he's just like a guy you want to see get murdered, which is so common in these early 90 films. But I thought the film was kind of beautiful in a lot of ways. The score is one of the best scores ever, and it is reused in the new one and also updated, which if there's anything I liked about the new one, we'll get into, it is the score. But yeah, there's so many great stories with this film. Doing some research, looking back, of course, the fact that Virginia Madsen, Michael Madsen's sister, funny enough, she was actually hypnotized for all the scenes that she films with the Candyman, like legitimately hypnotized, which is why she's in that weird trance state.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
That's absolutely insane to me. It got to the point where she like had to tell them to stop doing it because it was freaking her out so much. But
wow.
When you watch it, of course, you're probably like thinking this is bad acting, but the fact that they really did that, I thought that was awesome. They used real bees. I saw that Tony Todd, who plays Candyman, had in his contract he would get $1,000 per bee sting, and he had 23 stings, which is pretty crazy. And
that's
Virginia,
insane. I wouldn't be able to do that. I have an extreme fear of bees. I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, so I guess what they do is they have to be like 11 months old because the stings aren't dangerous at that point, but they look like real bees. So everything about it is just insane to me. Like this would never, ever in a million years happen today with CGI. So I have a lot of respect for the way they filmed it. Like you said, though, a lot of it does not hold up. I think the overall foundation of the story works really well as some of the more poetic aspects of it, almost like a Dracula-type villain who's not really meant to be super scary, but more just mythical and like a ghost, basically. But after rewatching it, I did have a lot of expectations, and I really was looking forward to seeing Tony Todd return for the new one because they said he was coming back. In interviews, they said it would not be just a cameo. And that's where I will leave my expectations. But how do you feel? 2021 Candyman, directed by, what's her name? Nia DaCosta.
Yes. So, like I always do, I'm going to start off with cinematography. I thought this movie was beautiful. The color palettes, the camera work, the way that they update the audience on what had happened in the previous film. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. Absolutely stunning, very original, and very creative. I think I'm going to disagree with you on all of these things. It's going to be so funny. It should be a good discussion. I really liked the plot. I thought it was very solid. I thought it was concise. I thought it was to the point. I'm seeing Russo's look in his eyes. He looks like he's going to choke me through the monitor. But yeah, it's a shorter movie, just like the first one is. So I thought it was pretty tight. I did think that the twist is predictable. In my opinion, I kind of hate when movies go in that realm.
Is there a twist?
Yes, exactly. it's kind of like the Star Wars effect. I won't get into it until spoilers, but again, it's very predictable. I thought Yahya, he puts in a tremendous performance. I thought he did his thing. I thought the supporting cast actually did a very good job as well. Teyana Paris, she's really good, and she's starting to put together a nice little filmography. I keep on seeing her face within like the past 5 years. She's been in a ton of stuff. Coleman Domingo is someone who's not talked about enough in Hollywood. I think he's a great character actor. I know you have problems with the character in and of itself, but I thought he just put in a worthy performance, and he just does a really, really good job. Pacing, again, I thought it was very good. It was kind of like the Millennium Force, where it was a slow burn. We kept on creeping up. Then once we get there, we're full go for probably the last 20 minutes or so. So I actually liked that. It was kind of like Don't Breathe 2 as well. But yeah, I do recommend. You actually predicted this. You said that you thought that I would like it more than the original. I did, because I do not have the nostalgia associated with that first one. But tell me how you were offended by this, and tell me why I am just ignorant on this in total.
No, you're not ignorant. So there's a lot I liked about this film. One being the direction and cinematography, like you talked about. This movie opens very uniquely with all of the production labels in reverse, because as if you're looking through a mirror. I thought that was a nice touch. I loved the new score that's a spin on the original score that plays for the opening of the film. One thing I thought was really cool, too, is the opening of the original film shows Chicago from sky view, and this shows Chicago from street level, which I thought, again, really cool touches, and the cinematography throughout the film was flawless. I really think that Nia DaCosta, who is going to be directing the second Captain Marvel film, like, she is going to do great things. If you told me Jordan Peele had directed this film, I would have totally believed you. She nailed his style for sure. If you told me Jordan Peele wrote this film, I'd be a lot more surprised based off of how great Get Out was, and even though I have issues with Us, this movie just did not feel as fully formed. This felt like a idea that they had, and they just didn't know quite how to get it from point A to point B. But again, like you said, the acting, amazing. I think, what's his name again? Yahya Abdul-Mateen?
Yep.
Yeah, he's going to be he's going to be one of those guys that
he's a star.
Absolute star. He was great in this. He really went for the role. Some of the stuff I liked about the overall plot, I did like that it was kind of similar to The Fly, in the sense that it had some elements of transformation, which we will get into. Most of the other stuff is going to be spoiler-based, but I will say most of my issues with this film are it wants to be a remake and it wants to be a sequel so bad, and it ends up being neither, essentially. And that's really where my main issues come. And they shouldn't tell people that someone's going to be in the film if he's really not going to be in it. That's not a spoiler. Tony Todd is not in this film. There is a small cameo, but they made it very seem like he was going to be playing the original Candyman. That really did frustrate me. It brought back memories of Luke Skywalker in Force Awakens, a good example. So yeah, it just left me on a downer note for sure for the final act. But overall, very well technically made film that I could recommend to people if you like Jordan Peele. If you like the original, you'll get some nostalgia, but you're probably going to be left frustrated. I think this movie is better made for people who have not seen or really care for the original. But let's move into some spoilers. There is a lot to get to. Anything specific you want to touch on?
I'm going to let you take the reins. On this one. I don't have anything specific that I necessarily have to talk about. Again, I kind of echo what you said. I agree. I think if you don't have nostalgia for the first one, I do think that you'll really, really enjoy this one. The problem I guess it's not really a problem. There's the predictability that he is the child that was left for dead in the fire in the first one. I don't think that it necessarily had to have that connective tissue to the first one. Like you said, I think it struggles between being a remake and being a sequel. And I think that was like this transitions it into being a full-on sequel. I don't necessarily think it was necessary. I think it was thrown in. I think he could have just been an independent character, but that was really my only big problem with the movie. So go ahead, let me know, and I'll comment on your rant here.
So that's a great place to start. So I knew going in that it was him. So it was actually I had a bet with someone about this, about if it would be him, but the information was released prior. It's mentioned very specifically that the baby's name is Anthony McCoy, and he's referred to as Anthony McCoy in the very first scene of the film. So in that sense, you're right. I think that's the worst part of the film, because you're waiting for them to reveal something that you already know, and it's like when you said twist, I didn't know that's what you were talking about. I thought you were going to talk about the twist of him becoming Candyman, which also is very
that's not I think that clear. Is even I think that's even in the trailer, isn't it? Essentially that he's going to become this, or at least transition semi.
Sure, it's in the trailer, and he's clearly the person on the poster in the outfit. So yes, that's a huge issue I had with the film, although it was great to see, forgive me for getting the actress's name, return from the first film. She looks amazing, by the way. It's been 30 years. She looks like she hasn't aged a day amazingly.
She looks great.
So that part really did not work for me, and I think, like you said, it would have been better off if they just if this was just a remake. That's really the way it should have gone. They could have told it in the sense of these are ghost stories, and the first one was just a ghost story that was told, but there's no connective characters or anything. And that's really where my main issues with this film start. So he has a connection to the original Candyman, Tony Todd's Candyman, but Tony Todd's Candyman is not in this film. They instead have the new actor, I don't even know the guy's name, that's playing Candyman throughout the entire film. Give me a sec to look it up. Do you know the guy's name? Sherman Fields was played by Michael Hargrove. So he's the essential ghost Candyman throughout this entire movie. And I thought, that makes no sense. Why is Anthony seeing this other Candyman who he never has a connection with? And the other Candyman has no connection to bees or anything like that. So nothing really made sense, and that was kind of bothering me. Throughout the film, we would see bees, but that is from the 1992 Candyman. So I don't know if you picked up on that, if it bothered you at all. I assume that stuff would not bother you as far as Tony Todd not appearing, but where were we at with it?
Yeah, so yes, like you predicted, that stuff I had no issue with that whatsoever. Now, if that was like in a Star Wars film and there was connective tissue that didn't make sense, I would absolutely flip out. But again, the Candyman franchise specifically, just not something that I'm necessarily attached to. So to be honest, I don't even really notice that type of stuff. But yeah, I could definitely see where that would anger you.
Yeah, and of course, I think Tony Todd is one of the most influential horror villains, and him as the Candyman, of course. And I know he's specifically important to a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of people that are upset to find out that not only is he not in the film, but then there's a very patronizing cameo as the very last shot of the film. For no reason at all, he appears and he delivers a line. He was in the trailer, of course, delivering the same exact line. So I thought it was very, very ridiculous to have him appear at all. Like I said, I think they should have just wiped the slate clean. He's an older guy now. We all would have understood that they didn't bring him back, but they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. And it really, to me, felt that they did not plan to put him in this movie, and they added it in post-production. Is that what you kind of took away from that?
I mean, yeah, it kind of has to be that way, right? Like if the original plan was to have him in the entirety of the movie, it would have just happened, you know? Maybe it might have been a COVID type thing where he just wasn't able to do it or something like that. But
But this movie was filmed in like 2018, so
okay, yeah, so that wouldn't even make sense then. It's just one of those things that, like you said, maybe it was just a nod to the audience, but again, then don't involve them in the marketing whatsoever. Maybe that would have been a cool marketing, or not marketing type thing, but just an involvement for first-time watchers. But yeah, don't include it in the marketing. It's misrepresenting what the movie actually is.
Yeah, and I guess even if he was just a little cameo at the end, I would have been fine with it if he wasn't so important to the plot of the film. And that's really my only issue with it, is he was mentioned and referenced over and over ad nauseum to the point where you're like, all right, he's clearly going to be showing up in this movie in a big role. I thought the third act reveal would be that, he is the ghost that we've been seeing, but that just was not the case, which, again, that's going to come down to just me being kind of feeling insulted by the film in that regard. But like I said, there were a lot of things I liked about the movie. I have a bunch of little nitpicky stuff that I'm not even going to get to, because clearly they just didn't give a shit. So, as far as any scenes that stood out to you, did you think this movie was scary at all?
I did not think this movie was scary at all, one bit. I didn't think the first one was scary either. I kind of just looked at them as more of like thrillers, kind of, or like you said, like just like camps, like ghost stories told around the fire type thing, where it's not necessarily meant to scare you. It's just like an overall encompassing story that's very entertaining. I will say that every scene in the laundromat I thought was very encapsulating, and I thought that the dialogue was really well done. That's where I do see the Jordan Peele writing type stuff. I thought that it was very I just thought that it was well done. And I'm trying to think of, I thought that the original art show scene was also very entertaining. The way that he's talking to the person that's about to like buy the art and whatever. I thought it was very well done. I thought everybody was able to show that their acting chops are at a premium, and I really enjoyed myself with this movie. I thought it was definitely worth my time, and I'm happy that I thought that it was a cool double feature. I watched them back to back essentially, and I thought it was nice. I thought it was cool.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. I know a lot of people did enjoy it. It seems like the only people that did not enjoy it are the ones that love the original, which it's kind of funny. Legacy Sequels is a podcast episode we could do at a different time. I have a lot of issues with them, specifically scary movies. Don't seem to know how to do them. I'll say Halloween was probably the only one that I've ever really enjoyed. But last thing I will bring up with this movie, obviously there's a huge message that they're trying to get across with this, and I think the message is worth telling. I just, again, think they really poorly did it. Did a really poor job of executing that message, specifically with a lot of innocent people being murdered. Again, it's very topical to a lot of stuff that's happening. One thing that really confused me was that he was not being looked at as a suspect for all these murders around his artwork, which, again, in the original movie, that's a big part of the plot, is that she's viewed as a killer. I don't know why they chose not to do that, but I thought if you took an extra 10 minutes to have some interrogation scenes where, maybe he's getting abused, I thought that could have really played, because I thought the cops at the end just came off very one-dimensional villains for no other reason than like the guy from the first film, where you just want to see them get killed, which is, to me, just a very poor plot device.
Yeah, I don't want to use the word lazy because Jordan Peele is a master, but like you said, I do think there are different ways that you can go about getting the message across. I actually do think it is done well throughout the film, but at the end, like you were saying, it kind of becomes like a stereotype as opposed to having it be like multidimensional and thought-inducing. So that is, in my opinion, that is a problem. But at that point in time, that's something for after the movie analysis, as opposed to like when I was watching it, I was just engrossed in the movie and I was just watching it, having a good time. But like you said, after the movie, you start thinking about these things and how it can be done differently. Hindsight's always 20/20, but definitely some stuff that could have been done in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty much where I stand with it. Again, very excited to see pretty much everyone involved with this film move on to other things. Will we get a Candyman sequel? I don't think so. If I had to put money on it, I don't think we will. I don't think it really makes much sense. But where do you stand? Do you think we will see him return to this role?
I think that we are going to see a sequel. I'm pretty sure that it did pretty darn well at the box office this weekend, and it's critically, it's got like an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. If that number stays up and it continues to make money, it's Hollywood. We're going to see a sequel. I'm not sure if Jordan Peele will probably come back as like an EP. He probably won't be the head writer, but I think we will see a sequel.
Fair enough. Time will tell. Of course, maybe they will bring back Tony Todd for the sequel in a bigger role. That's always a possibility to kind of right the wrongs that were done here to me. But yeah, overall, again, did not hate this film. I gave it a very generous score for a movie that I definitely will never watch again. I'm going to give it a 6.2 out of 10 based off the 10 categories. If you guys want to see a breakdown of that, that will be on our social media page. But thanks for stopping by, Mr. Adam Tylenda. Of course, guys, Adam hosts his own podcast with Jacob Drosty, the Movie Mania podcast. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, pretty much everywhere podcasts are available. Movie Mania Pod on social media. Any last words for the people?
I just want to thank you again for having me on. Hopefully I can start to get on a little bit more. But yeah, Movie Mania podcast. We're going through movies like it's crazy. We're 2 to 3 movies a week. There's a lot of movies coming out now too that are actually worth watching, so the reviews are probably going to be a lot more energetic and positive, so I'm excited about that. But again, I just want to thank you, man. This is awesome.
Last question for you. Will you be reviewing the 1999 remake of the film She's All That, He's All That? Is it going to be on your list?
That is absolutely not on the list. Unless someone out there wants to individually message me and say that this needs to be reviewed, then maybe it's a possibility.
I will make a fake account to message you and get this movie reviewed 100%. But yep, that's all I got. If you guys have any thoughts on Candyman or Don't Breathe, please send them to us. Any topics you want to hear discussed. I still have a lot to say about this film, so reach out and we will definitely keep the conversation going. But until next time, bye.
Made for movies.